Chapter 321 Last Stand 3. Amalgamation of will is not unlimited. Although it could be replenished, it's not so fast. The emperor of the Wessel Empire was basically using the amalgamation of will he had accumulated over the past 100 years to resurrect billions of puppets simultaneously. Of course, Khan also knew this. Thus, after watching the battle, he frowned. These puppets are really useless, they couldn't even dodge a bullet. The puppets had already gone berserk, all the pilots controlling them were gone. What they could only do now was to fight forward against the enemy until they were destroyed. Under the precise coordination of the Moonlight Empire soldiers, such struggle made them die faster. Not wanting to waste his amalgamation of will, Khan quickly looked for a way he could directly control the puppets. After examining the internal structure of the puppets, Khan frowned. Damn puppet god! He cursed. Is that puppet god a lunatic or something? Looking at the dense runes of encryption. If one didn't know anything, one would think these puppets were a peerless treasure. Putting such encryption is not only resource extensive, it's also time-consuming. Just a few trash puppets had these dense inscriptions. He could only imagine how cheap and stingy the god of puppets was. If someone got these trash puppets, they could only destroy them and put them where they belong. What a dog! Khan clicked his tongue. With his limited rune and encryption knowledge, looking at it was like deciphering unknowable scratches. Giving up, Khan could only use brute force to control the puppets. Gathering the amalgamation of will, he slowly cracked the encryption, destroying it bit by bit. Soon after a few minutes, wasting a vast amount of amalgamation of will. The central command of the puppet was under his control. Damn! What a waste of amalgamation of will! Although he successfully cracked the encryption, the cost made his heart twitch in distress. I can only vent my anger on you. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the stalemate continued. This is too easy. With each fire of the cannon, hundreds of millions of puppets are destroyed. Although the puppets would immediately be resurrected, wasting their effort. They were already informed that the enemy was also consuming a lot of energy. Thus, although it looked like a stalemate as the battle continued, their chances of winning grew geometrically. Don't be too complacent, the enemy wouldn't be that simple. Captain, you worry too much. What haven't we seen? These puppets are mere cannon fodder, like insects to a fire. No matter their number, they'll die out sooner or later. I hope so. Unfortunately, like a curse, the puppets suddenly stopped advancing and quickly backed out. The sudden situation made them momentarily pause. They had been informed that the puppets had already lost control and were merely running on automated programs. However, looking at it now, something seems to have changed. This is... What happened? Don't worry, just fire. Knowing that they couldn't think much, they just fired. However, another miraculous scene appeared. The puppets that the arcane cannon locked dodged. Each puppet seemed to have a mind of its own and dodged like an independent unit. In the past, each believer controlled thousands to millions of puppets. The puppet could only follow simple and rough commands. Yet, looking at the extreme movement, dodging a bullet at the speed of light, they couldn't help but be shocked. Is this still a puppet? Did they gain a mind of their own? Soon, with each fire, they grew in despair. Although the puppet couldn't dodge all their fire bombardment, all extreme operation minimized their casualties to less than 1 million. From hundreds of millions to less than 1 million. The disparity made their hearts thump, feeling fear of the enemy. In the command center. It can't be. Johnson, seeing this, couldn't believe his eyes. It's about time, Isabella muttered as if she expected this. Did the Emperor of the Wessel Empire just control each puppet individually? Smith asked jokingly. That's right, this is quite normal. Normal? The people in the room couldn't help but mutter speechlessly. To dodge over 100 billion bullets simultaneously, one must have perfect control of each puppet, exerting their full power. Hearing the confirmation of their field commander, it seemed that the Emperor of the Wessel Empire really controlled each individual puppet. A person having the capability to control billions of puppets perfectly? How insane is that? Although they already expected that defeating the Wessel Empire wouldn't be easy. Seeing one individual defeat them to this degree is despairing. Don't be too shocked, controlling the amalgamation of will, the will of trillions of people is not easy. Being able to control billions of puppets individually is normal. Isabella had heard from her husband that controlling the amalgamation of will is like splitting your head into millions and millions of pieces. The more you split it, the more energy and proficiency you have in the amalgamation of will. Thus, seeing the Emperor of the Wessel Empire control individual puppets easily, she felt it was normal.
Then what do we do now?
As they talked, the puppet army was getting closer and closer. After dodging almost all their bombardment, coupled with immortality, they were basically an invincible army. This is indeed a problem. In this way, we could only disregard the previous plan. Isabella sighed. Isabel thought that with over 100 million arcane cannons, they would have the edge over the Wessel Empire. Who knew just one change would bring them back to square one? Now, they could only stall for time again and wait for Maximus. Dispatch all the legions, we'll hold off the enemy as long as possible. The Moonlight Empire had 7 divisions in the army. 3 support units and 5 fighting units. The 3 supporting divisions were headed by Hazel, Erica, and Zoe were the supply and food division. Headed by Angeline and Irene were the weapon and potion division. Headed by Emma and Serene was the life division. As for the fighting division, headed by Isabella was the Imperial Legion, numbering 10,000 Tier 8 elites. Headed by Rose was the Berserk Legion, numbering 1,000 berserkers. Headed by Johnson was the Navy, numbering 100 billion soldiers with at least Tier 6 strength. Headed by Smith was the infantry, numbering over 4 trillion soldiers with at least Tier 3 strength. Then there were the secret divisions. Headed by Livia was the Symphony of Death, numbering 100,000 Tier 7 conductors. Headed by Luna was the Rhythm of Death, numbering 1,000,000 Tier 7 battle dancers. Headed by Jane was the Guardian Legion, numbering 1,000,000 Tier 7 Imperial Guards. Although it looked like the secret divisions was outnumbered and surpassed in the quality of soldiers. Combined, they could all defeat the fighting division of the Moonlight Empire. Livia and her Symphony of Death are a group of Tier 7 battle conductors. A profession known for its war capabilities of supporting, enhancing, or even mass killing. Especially Livia's physique, the nether sound. A heavenly physique that can play the orchestra of death. All those who hear the sound would wail and embrace death themselves. The louder, the more beautiful, the more complete a symphony is, the more powerful the effect of the physique. Like a curse, they would die no matter the defense as long as they heard it. As for Luna and her legion, they were like the blood of the Symphony of Death. If a conductor without a battle dance combat power is 1, a conductor with a battle dancer combat power is 1,000. As for the Guard Legion, they were individuals chosen from all of the Moonlight Empire. Their talent, skill, combat power, and resources are the best in the Empire. The only reason why they were only Tier 7 is that they were laying a solid foundation. Cultivating an element condensed with all the others, no matter how many resources they take, it will take time to advance to Tier 8. These 3 secret divisions are considered the Moonlight Empire's strongest force, besides those hidden Tier 9 weapons. The Tier 9 weapons are the real trump card of the Moonlight Empire. Without encountering a life and death situation, they could never be fired. This is a weapon of mass destruction, a game-breaker to the game. For the unknown powerhouse setting the competition, it would be akin to cheating once they used the Tier 9 weapons. Although the unspoken rule only said that they were not allowed to get external help from other continents. It's clear that a weapon bought from another dimension does not comply with the rule. Not wanting to provoke this unknown power, they tried to avoid using Tier 9 weapons as much as possible. They would rather lose some people than provoke this game maker. Because according to Maximus, the one setting the rule is a powerhouse from ancient times. Without him present, they couldn't make enemies that they couldn't defeat everywhere. Of course, once in danger, they couldn't care less. All hell breaks loose for all they care. Chapter 322. A clone? In the barracks, Luna, Livia, and Jane quickly received the message from Isabella.
So it's time for us to fight?
Luna stood up, stretching her body. It's about time, Jane nodded, picking up her armor. You need to be careful, the enemy this time is not simple, Olivia advised. We know, otherwise why would we be needed? Throughout the years of war, they had been on the sidelines. The enemy was so weak that they didn't need to fight. Anyway, just be careful. All right, enough of that, we need to hurry, it seems the enemy is about to reach us. Soon after gearing up, they quickly called their subordinates. After assembling, they turned to the teleportation array to quickly reach the battlefield. In the front line,
Isabella,
Luna and the others greeted. You 3 are here, Isabella smiled in relief.
How's the enemy?
Although they had already been briefed before coming here, it was unclear.
As you could see?
Isabella sighed and pointed to the battlefield. Looking out, it seems that they were in a dire state. Just a few minutes since the emperor of the Wessel Empire moved. The distance between the puppet and them reached less than 1,000 kilometers. This was already like an inch close. Any wrong move and the empire would be breached. If not for the Berserk Legions, Imperial Legion, and the Empire puppets keeping the balance, the Moonlight Empire would probably be breached by now. After explaining the specifics, Luna and the others just nodded.
Don't worry, leave it to us.
Just mere puppets, even if every one of them had a will, so what? Then it's up to you. On the battlefield, the 3 newly arrived legions caused some commotion. Is this the secret legion of our empire?
It's great.
Our backup is here. How we're safe. The soldiers, who were already crumbling from firing arcane cannons, muttered in relief. The closer the enemy got, the more pressure they felt. Just a touch from the enemy, and they would be finished. It's unlike in the past, where even a Tier 7 individual could fight back-to-back with a puppet. Now, the puppet was like a group of fighting geniuses, a god on the battlefield. The Berserker Legion, who was the first to support them, already confirmed this. After defeating the believers of gods and seeing they no longer got resurrected, the Berserker Legion quickly came to support the battlefield. At first, the puppet was like trash that the Berserker Legion could easily eliminate. Each strike they made took thousands and thousands of puppets. However, as time passed, the puppets quickly adapted and formed a mini-formation. They were like nimble monkeys that even the elites of the Empire could be played in applause. Fortunately, the Berserker Legion was not vegetarian. After seeing that the enemy was not easy, they quickly coordinated and suppressed the enemy.
However, this is not enough.
Seeing the puppet couldn't take them on, the puppets decided to stall time, isolating the Berserker Legion from the rest. With crowd control, the puppets continued to advance into the Moonlight Empire. Fortunately, just in time, the Imperial Legion led by Isabella arrived on the battlefield. After getting into formation, they became like a giant beast on the battlefield. No matter the strategies, the giant beast continued to rampage, barely suppressing the puppets' advancement. However, they knew this was not long-term. Given how quickly the puppets adapted, casualties would appear sooner or later. Thus, seeing the alleged secret legions, they couldn't be happier. Soon, Jane and the Guardian Legion flew in front as the last wall against the Empire. After settling, they didn't move like a wall whose only role is to guard. They were not here to fight, they were here to ensure the safety of the regular soldiers so they would not get caught up in the coming battle. On the other hand, Luna and her legion flew into the center of the battlefield.
Rose.
Luna greeted, seeing Rose silently watching the battlefield.
You're here, Luna.
Rose smiled lightly. Why are you standing still?
Don't you want to fight?
It's too boring and a waste of energy. The puppets were too weak for Rose to arouse her interest. Standing on the battlefield already gave her legion belief and confidence, which was more than enough. A mere cannon fodders didn't deserve her effort and skills. Unless it were life-threatening, she wouldn't move to do anything. Oh, then let me stretch my body first. Luna smiled, waiting for the cue. Unlike Rose, they weren't here to hold off the enemy. Isabella called them here to go for the kill.
Then good luck.
Soon, Livia and her legion, the Orchestra of Death, got into position.
Ready.
100,000 individuals stood straight, grabbing their instruments, waiting for Livia's instruction.
Begin.
Livia shouted, activating her special physique.
Twang.
With a wave of her hands, a music note rang, sending the battlefield into a brief pause. The nether-like energy then begins to spread around the battlefield like a mist. Finally, hearing the sound, Luna smiled.
Hold steady. Dang. Attack.
Like a percussion of death, the legion led by Luna dashed forward without regard to the enemy. They didn't seem to know they were only a Tier 7 dog fighting billions of Tier 8 puppets controlled by a god. Following the flow of melodies, they quickly shuffled through the enemy effortlessly. As they came face to face with a puppet, the sound of string and drum seemed to control their body, dodging any attack. As the nether encroaches on the battlefield, the sound of music suddenly changed. From melodic to the sound of death, holding their weapons, they flawlessly destroyed the puppets simply with a flip of a hand. The nether-like energy seemed to make the puppet so brittle that a gust of wind could break it. It was like a poison, making 1,000,000 Tier 7 individuals defeat a dragon without fangs and wings. Like music to the ears and feast to the eyes, they moved elegantly while harvesting the enemy. As the minutes passed by, hundreds of millions of puppets died unconsciously. In the Wessel Empire, Khan also noticed this and was a little surprised. This empire is insane. He had just adapted to the Berserker and Imperial legions. Now, there's another one? Just how much power and potential does this little empire have hidden? As he felt his amalgamation of will being consumed wildly, Khan quickly ran his mind to think of a solution. However, a few hours later, after various trials to cope with the enemy, nothing changed. Try after try, no matter what strategies he employed, none worked. What a damn Moonlight Empire! Khan muttered, gritting his teeth. As the battle continued, he felt his amalgamation being drained faster and faster. Just a few hours of battle and almost 10% of his accumulated amalgamation of will is gone. I guess I can only wait. Khan gave up. Defeating the Moonlight Empire right now was virtually impossible. Just the addition of a legion made his army collapse in shambles. Disperse. Deciding to stall for time, Khan decided to employ guerrilla tactics. In the Moonlight Empire, noticing the puppet retreat again, the smiles on their faces suddenly bloomed. The enemy retreated. We defeated the enemy. Hooray to the mighty Moonlight Empire. We win. Looking at this, Luna, who was about to chase the enemy, stopped. What a bunch of weaklings. Luna muttered unsatisfactorily, seeing the puppet retreat. She hadn't had fun yet and the enemy already retreated. I told you fighting them is not fun, Rose teased. Anyway, do we still chase the enemy? Luna just rolled her eyes and asked. I don't know, let's wait for Isabella. You don't have to, Isabella said, suddenly appearing beside them. Why? They asked in puzzlement. Judging by the state of the enemy, they could already have pushed the enemy to the ground. They should take this victory and end this once and for all. According to Neo, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire seems to want to buy time. Since that is so, then we will gladly give him time. Our victory this time is a close call. If we didn't want casualties, we still have to wait for Maximus. Rose and Luna nodded in understanding. Although they felt they could win now, there are still many unknowns. Is this all the power that the Wessel Empire has? Are the gods behind the schemes only helping to this degree? Furthermore, the capabilities of the amalgamation of will are not just resurrection. As long as the Emperor of the Wessel Empire remains, many things could happen. It's better to wait for their husband and decide. Soon, the battle continued. With Khan resorting to guerrilla warfare, the intensity of the war plummeted. Days, weeks, and months passed and the war continued. Isabella and the others also cooperated, adding fire from time to time so that Khan wouldn't notice something weird. At the tacit understanding of both parties. A year passed by unconsciously, 3 years since Maximus disappeared. In the Wessel Empire, Khan, who was meditating, receiving the last bits of memories that came to his mind, slowly opened his eyes. I see, so that was it. His demeanor suddenly changed from that of an emperor to that of a sage. There seemed to be a light in his eyes as he saw everything in the world differently. Digesting the memory, Khan quickly understood his origin. I am a clone. Chapter 323 The Return of the Emperor. In the present time, just as Maximus was about to return to the Moonlight Empire, he noticed 2 streaks of light coming toward him.
Sky?
The kids? Seeing that it was his family, he stopped.
Maximus!
Sky flew into his arms, enveloping him in a hug. Sorry I made you worried. No, don't talk, just let me hug you, Sky murmured softly. After years of relentless searching and not finding Maximus, Sky nearly went crazy. Although she knew Maximus was alive, she didn't know where he was or if they would ever meet again. The partings she had experienced in her past lifetimes seemed to have traumatized her, that she feared that she would never see Maximus again. Don't worry, I'm here. Maximus sighed softly, gently hugging Sky. Although he didn't know what she experienced, seeing her lonely back, Maximus couldn't help but blame himself for his carelessness. If he had not been careless, this ambush wouldn't even have been successful. With all kinds of abilities, he created an automated danger premonition ability. However, because there was no danger to him, the passive danger premonition didn't work. Maximus was also too lazy to manually divine things, making Nick's ambush successful. I need to be more careful in the future, Maximus vowed. As the wind blew around them, a Tier 9 ship quickly arrived in their place. Dad! We finally found you! Asha shouted, flying towards him. Ha ha ha, grandfather! We finally found you! Lila laughed happily, finally locating Maximus. Maya also smiled as they found their grandfather.
You found me so quickly.
Maximus smiled. It seemed that Sky had found him using her vague connection with the system. As for the children, it was much easier. Asha's luck was so overwhelming that she could find anything she wanted. The only reason they hadn't found him earlier was probably because of the reverse time barrier. This was an innate treasure formed by the world that could trap gods. Although it had little lethality, it was quite effective at trapping someone.
Dad, you disappeared for so long. Were you cheating on mothers?
Asha asked teasingly. Sky, who was hugging him, was also a little suspicious and looked at him.
You really are a naughty child.
Maximus said, pinching her cheeks.
Then what happened to you, grandfather?
Lila asked. Some gods trap me, Maximus sighed, telling them the story.
What? How dare those gods?
It seems they've been living for so long that they've forgotten the meaning of death, as Sky said, full of killing intent. Relax, I've already killed the mastermind, you don't have to take care of the rest.
Even then I dash.
Don't worry, leave everything to me. Too much killing would cause chaos. He was only tier 8 right now and couldn't fight the world. Now that he had already escaped their grasp, he had no reason to kill them anymore. They're still hateful, father.
You should at least get some compensation.
Asha pouted.
What compensation do they have? They're probably too poor to target even grandfather.
To this, Maximus only smiled wryly. Throughout the years, he hadn't experienced what it was like to loot an enemy. He was like a billionaire visiting the beggar's area, no matter what he found, it was worthless. As for Nyx, he should have had some decent treasure to be able to bring out the reverse time barrier. Unfortunately, he died too quickly, and most of his treasure was probably in the divine continent. As for the other gods, they were dirt poor, his children and grandchildren were probably much richer than them. After a bit of reminiscing, he asked them about the Empire.
I don't know anything, I was busy finding you.
Sky has already gone crazy looking for Maximus, how could she have time to care for a mere mortal empire? Fortunately, Asha and the others knew some information and quickly told him. Hearing that the Empire was at war, he felt a little angry and distressed. These gods really dared to plot against him. If not for his wives and children standing up at critical times, the Moonlight Empire would have fallen by now. Feeling the amalgamation of will directed from the cursed continent, it seemed his empire was still safe. Let's go back and see who had the audacity to bully you while I was away. With a wave of his hand, he urged the amalgamation of will, teleporting them to the cursed continent. In the Moonlight Empire, the once lively realm filled with war and chaos had turned desolate. The great empire that once stood proudly was now in ruins, filled with desolation and destruction. The architecture, beautiful scenery, and bustling cities that once stood were now gone. Looking at this scene, Maximus frowned.
How could this be?
Asha muttered in shock. Just over a year ago, the Moonlight Empire was still suppressing the Wessel Empire. Looking at the desolate land, they felt as though their eyes were playing tricks on them. TSK, how destructive, Maximus clicked his tongue. If not for the feeling that his family and people were still alive and well, he would be enraged by now. Still, seeing that beautiful place he painstakingly built destroyed, he couldn't help but be angry.
They're not here, come with me.
With a leap, they teleported to the capital of the Empire, the Moonshadow City. The biggest and most prosperous city in the Empire was now filled with people like ants. A barrier stood proudly as a man floated at the top, slowly eroding the barrier with the amalgamation of will. The appearance of Maximus and the others was soon quickly noticed.
Is that His Majesty?
His Majesty returned.
We're saved.
Ha ha ha, Wessel Empire, clean your neck, it's time to die. The crowd, tightly packed like sardines in a can, shouted loudly. A few months ago, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire seemed to have awakened. With the power of an individual, he swept toward the Empire with great fanfare. The legions, the generals, the war weapons, everything was useless. It seemed as though they were devoured by a black hole and nothing could pass through. As a last resort, Isabella used the Tier 9 dimensional weapon hidden in the Empire. However, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire seemed to have long known this. Using that amalgamation of will, he deflected the attack effortlessly, a feat no normal Tier 9 Apex Sovereign could achieve. Unless one was at the peak of Tier 9, deflecting an attack from a dimensional weapon was suicide. Possessing a unique treasure, in conjunction with the amalgamation of will, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire was invincible. No matter how many trump cards they had, it was useless. At the last resort, Isabella and the others used their strength, forcibly holding back the emperor of the Wesel Empire, giving them time to retreat. The birthplace of the empire, the Moonshadow City, was their last refuge. After a heart-wrenching battle, all of the people in the empire managed to escape. Unfortunately, it's not without a cost. Several members of the royal family were still in a coma or injured until now. The weird effect of the amalgamation of will seemed to interfere with any healing skills and potions. Fortunately, the royal family had a great fate. It seemed that nothing could kill them. Even when they were on the verge of dying, an unknown source seemed to come to their bodies, keeping them alive. After escaping to the Moonshadow City, riddled with injuries, their field general, Isabella, activated their last line of defense, a Tier 9 dimensional defensive array. It is said that it was set up by their emperor, capable of withstanding the disasters of the world. To their joy, the array lived up to its reputation, stopping the raging monsters from destroying their land. However, activating the array was not without a cost. Millions upon millions of top magic crystals were needed just to stop the monsters from advancing. Although the empire seemed to possess unlimited wealth, it could not last under such consumption. Furthermore, with about 100 trillion people living in the city, it can be said they were like ants in a pot. From the sky to the ground, every space was filled with people bundled together. If not for various spacefolding arrays set in the city, they wouldn't even fit, much less move. With all kinds of problems, months passed by as they despaired. Fortunately, they were not without hope. The emperor, the omnipotent ruler who built the Moonlight Empire into one of the most prosperous empires in just 100 years, Maximus Shadowcrest, a living legend, was embedded in their hearts. Even with all kinds of difficulties and inconveniences, even in despair and powerlessness, even when they were about to die, they kept hope that he would appear. Seeing that man they had been praying and wishing for, the hope in their hearts bloomed. The despair they had disappeared. All kinds of disasters they suffered were like nothing. Looking at the man, a consensus suddenly united in their voice. "Welcome, Your Majesty. Welcome to the Moonlight Empire." Chapter 324 Thrilling Battle. Looking at the crowd shouting his name, Maximus only smiled. No words could comfort his people more than his actions. They didn't need sweet words but action to soothe their souls. "You should go back inside first, leave this to me," Maximus said to Sky and the others. The emperor of the Wesel Empire had already noticed him. Although he was confident in protecting his family at such close range, it's better to be safe than sorry. "Then be careful." Seeing Maximus's determined look, Sky just nodded. "Good luck, Dad. Give that hateful man a good beating," Asha said, cheering him on. "Grandpa, smack his face for me." Lila also cheered. "Come back quickly." After they retreated inside the barrier, Maximus turned his gaze toward the emperor of the Wesel Empire, who teleported before him. "So you're the famed emperor who started this era," Khan slowly said. Maximus didn't answer and just frowned, feeling a different aura from Khan. He had already investigated the ins and outs of this man. Looking at him now, it felt like a different person. "Oh, it seems that you've noticed?" Khan chuckled a little, seeing Maximus's change of expression. "Enough chit-chat, it's time to end you." He didn't care anymore if Khan was a different person. His anger was already boiling and he needed someone he could vent on. Seeing a perfect target in front of him, Maximus didn't hesitate much. Deploying the amalgamation of will, he dragged Khan out into the sea. Fighting in his territory is too destructive. Although he is angry, he is still sane. Khan didn't struggle much and let Maximus take him to the battlefield. After teleporting into the chaotic sea, far away from the cursed continent, Maximus immediately attacked. Mobilizing the amalgamation of will, knives and swords began to fill the world and descended upon Khan. A transcendent mastery of the amalgamation of will? What a fine specimen! Khan muttered in amazement. All the past emperors who managed to conquer all of the cursed continent only managed to master the amalgamation of will to perfection. Seeing an individual master the amalgamation of will to transcendence, the light in Khan's eyes intensified. Seeing the sword about to descend upon him, he waved his hand, turning it into pure energy scattering into the world. "You also mastered the amalgamation of will to transcendence." This time it was Maximus who was shocked. He had also read history and knew that perfect mastery is the limit to mastering the amalgamation of will. This is the inherent limit of the amalgamation of will. Unless one reaches Tier 9, no matter how long one spends, one can never reach transcendence mastery. This is contradictory, as one could never advance to Tier 9 without mastering the amalgamation of will to transcendence. Even he only mastered the amalgamation of will to transcendence after cheating. If it were not for Malgrin giving him the Monarch Abyss source, it would probably take thousands of years before he mastered it. Looking at Khan, who achieved transcendence mastery in just over 100 years, the shock in his heart was incomparable. "You don't have time to be shocked," Khan said, quickly attacking. Unfortunately, although Maximus was a little distracted, his proficiency in combat was already maximum. After dodging the attack, he mobilized the amalgamation of will again, attacking Khan. This time, dark rain began to form, corroding anything that it touched. As it reached Khan, it turned to pure energy again, disregarding his attack. Not giving up, Maximus deployed different attacks using the amalgamation of will. Wide-range attacks, concentrated attacks, close-range attacks, all kinds of skills passed through his hands. However, no matter how skilled he was, every attack that came to Khan was easily dissolved. "His mastery is much higher than mine?" Maximus suddenly thought. Although it was impossible seeing Khan easily solve his attacks, it was quite evident that his control was much higher than his. His system can only help him comprehend up to transcendence. After that, it was up to his comprehension to proceed. Not having time to waste on such an enormous task, his mastery was still stuck. Stopping his barrage of attacks, he began to think of a solution. As things went on, his amalgamation of will would sooner or later be depleted, leading to his defeat. If he couldn't think of a solution, he would be domed. "What's wrong? Are you giving up?" Khan said, taunting him. Khan looked as though he was an experimental subject struggling in his palm. Maximus saw the indifference of the other party, which made him clench his fist. His strongest attack is the amalgamation of will. His physique, mana, and even the power of law were only comparable to Tier 8. As Maximus thought was running, Khan swooped in and attacked him. The world suddenly darkened as the amalgamation of will turned into various fragments attacking him from all directions. As Maximus tried to mobilize his own, it suddenly got stuck. Knowing that it was Khan's doing, Maximus didn't panic. Not having the time to parry, he mobilized his power of law to dodge the attack. With various maneuvers, Maximus managed to dodge gracefully, dancing at the tip of a blade. Inexplicable. Khan praised truthfully. The amalgamation of will was comparable to the essence of law. Naturally, its speed was just as fast. Using the power of law, a lower-level energy, to dodge continuous fragments of his attack was like seeing God. He felt as though Maximus was a mortal dodging a barrage of rifles from a squad of well-trained soldiers. While Khan was admiring a piece of work, Maximus was already sweating bullets. Although he could keep up with the attack of the enemy, his energy couldn't. "By the way, the amalgamation of will. Since he can't use it, then absorb it." Mobilizing his power of law, he devoured the dormant amalgamation of will in his body. Initially, this was not possible, devouring a lower energy than itself. However, because the power of law he mastered was the origin of everything, everything can be turned interchangeably. Full of energy, he burned his power of law without regard to cost, increasing the frequency of his movements. As his power of law burned fiercer and fiercer, cracks began to form in his body. All the regenerative special physiques he formed in the past began to work, keeping his body intact. Getting a slight respite, Maximus looked at Khan. "It's time to return the attack." With a leap, Maximus quickly teleported near Khan and initiated an attack. This time, it was not the amalgamation of will but the pure power of law. Seeing this, Khan also got more serious and prompted a defense. Thud! Like a rock hitting an iron wall. Maximus's attack didn't do any damage. Seeing Khan standing in place, watching him like a clown, the anger in his chest burned further. Not caring about his body, he burned the power of law further and further. The various regenerative physiques he formed also began to fail as the cracks in his body got bigger and bigger. Kill! As a huge power of law gathered, it began to boil, causing the barrier that Khan set up to melt. Seeing that it was effective, Maximus smiled. "You're dead," Maximus muttered as his brain overclocked, making the world slow down. Although his mastery of the amalgamation of will is lower, Maximus quickly analyzed the properties of the defense Khan had set up. After identifying the specific property of his barrier, the boiling power of law quickly changed properties, tearing through the barriers Khan set up. Boom! An explosion occurred as his attack hit its target. Looking at the ragged Khan, who managed to escape at the last minute, Maximus smiled. "What's wrong? Scared of my little attack?" "What a cheap trick," Khan said coldly, feeling the damage to his body. This body of his was a mere Tier 8, receiving such an attack was life-threatening. If not for his reaction and proficiency in the amalgamation of will, he would probably have died. Such talent, I can't be careless, Khan thought seriously.
Let's see if you can still afford this cheap trick.
Repeating his trick, he swallowed all the amalgamation of will in his body, converting it into the power of law. With another attack, Khan's face changed as he set up another barrier. Maximus's attack was too fast and unpredictable for his body to respond, that he could only defend. Unfortunately, Maximus already knew what was effective, sealing his victory. After analyzing every fragment of the amalgamation of will of the barrier Khan had set up, the power of law he released changed correspondingly, tearing through Khan's defense. This time, Khan was not so lucky, as half of his body disintegrated before he escaped. Urging the amalgamation of will, Khan hurriedly healed his body. However, it seemed that Maximus did something in the attack as the healing ability of the amalgamation of will became ineffective.
What did you do?
Just die, Maximus said emotionlessly. This time, with barely an intact body, Khan couldn't dodge and disappeared with his attack. Looking at the scene, Maximus just shook his head in disappointment. Unfortunately, you're too far off. Although the battle was thrilling, it wasn't near death. Just a tier 10 poison was enough to kill Khan, what more for his other trump cards? Although these trump cards cost him almost all his money, they're quite effective.
Now, let's meet the mastermind.
Maximus muttered, looking at the center of the cursed continent. Chapter 325 End of War. Here it is. Maximus muttered, looking at the depth of the sea. The forbidden forest constitutes up to 90% of the landmass of the cursed continent. A forbidden land even for the holy emperors of the past dared not to explore. In the event of war, this landmass always sank into the sea, disappearing from the world's sight. It would only reappear after the holy emperor died and the unification of the cursed continent was disbanded. Valoros, the battle sage. I didn't expect you to participate in the war you initiated. That's right, Khan, whom he had fought earlier, was somewhat related to Valoros. After all, who would have a much deeper mastery in the amalgamation of will other than the creator?
Come out. I have something to tell you.
Maximus yelled domineeringly. Although he didn't want to fight with a peak apex sovereign, it didn't mean he was scared. He had nothing but money, with a myriad world mall, all kinds of tier 10 items were at his fingertips. To dare to harm his family, one should be ready to face the consequences. Even if he was a close confidant of Malgrin, there was no escaping due punishment. Soon, the sea boiled, as 90% of the continent slowly emerged from the sea. What power, Maximus marveled in amazement. Although the cursed continent didn't have even 1% of the former prosperity of the Nexus continent, it still measured in light years. To control it with just raw power, Maximus could only say it's worthy of a peak apex sovereign.
You called me?
A sound echoed in the sea as colossal pressure descended upon him.
What a good dog. You came out quickly.
Maximus taunted, resisting the pressure descending upon him. He had already learned his lesson and didn't foolishly use the amalgamation of will against its creator. Burning his power of law, he was like a stubborn fire against the sea. What a daring young lad, Valoros finally appeared, looking at Maximus with interest. To be able to defeat his clone, it could be said that Maximus was already close to his first test subject.
You. It seems that you are not from this dimension.
Maximus suddenly said in shock. After scanning Valoros, he noticed elements that shouldn't exist in the Ethereum realm. Practicing the origin, he was quite sensitive to different energy. No matter how Valoros had hidden it, it was like a light bulb in the dark. This discovery also made his body tense, ready to use all he could. Valoros was also a little shocked, hearing Maximus discovered him. More importantly, his intuition was eagerly warning him of impending danger.
Wait, young man, don't be impulsive.
Valoros hurriedly said. He didn't expect an aborigine from a tier 9 dimension to make him feel danger to this degree. Although he already knew Maximus possessed some connection with some dimensional merchant, he was still shocked. Looking at his clone's memories, it seemed he was killed by a tier 10 poison, preventing any energy beyond the origin of law from having any effect. Suddenly, it dawned on him, perhaps Maximus didn't have a connection with a dimensional merchant whatsoever. But Maximus owned one of those hateful transdimensional systems. Thinking of this, everything suddenly made sense. Maximus's rise and the Moonlight Empire's outrageous capabilities, all these illogical events suddenly came together. Before he could think anything, Maximus's cold voice, full of killing intent, reached him.
What happened to the previous Valoros?
Maximus asked, ready to end the man in front of him at any second. As for the question he asked, it was all a guise to distract him. He was not interested in whomever. After he killed him, he could find out everything later. Relax, I and Valoros are one. I was born and raised in this dimension, and more importantly, I mean no harm. Then die, Maximus coldly said, seeing Valoros relax. Releasing a tier 10 ceiling treasure, Valoros was shocked and angry. He had already told Maximus to relax and not be impulsive. He didn't expect him to still attack him. As he dodged the ceiling treasure, he didn't notice an attack coming from behind. Prick. Suddenly, a pricking sensation hit him in the back. As he was about to feel angry, his energy suddenly stagnated. What did you? Before he finished speaking, two needle-like items came flying to him. Urging his energy, he activated the treasure left by his other body. Clang! The two collided, slowly cracking after blocking the attack. Seeing that he can no longer talk sense to Maximus, he attacked. A mere test subject dared to attack me. D. Resisting his numbing sensation, he urged his origin of law to attack Maximus. However, before he could release the attack, another needle-like item came flying at him. This time, it's not one or two, but a dozen of them. With a clear picture, Valoros finally remembered what the needle-like item was. A tier 10 divine sealing needle? Valoros nearly cursed his mother. What the heck? What hatred did this brat have with him? Just one of these needles can only knock out those tier 10 creatures. Yet Maximus fired a dozen of them? Under such an attack, his tier 10 barrier disintegrated like paper. It didn't even last before he could cast his attack. It was too fast that a tier 9 body reaction couldn't keep up. Damn! Valoros cursed in despair as he slowly lost control of his body. You could still speak? Maximus muttered and threw another dozen tier 10 divine sealing needles. Prick! Seeing another dozen divine sealing needles felt into him, Valoros already gave up. His vision, hearing, and all of his senses were blocked. Even the origin of law he was brewing ready to use stagnated. Soon, even his thoughts stopped as if he was brain dead. TSK, what a waste. This thing is a defective product. Maximus said in distress. These divine sealing needles were the most expensive of his trump cards. Furthermore, they were one-time use consumables. He only had 100 of these, now, only 40 remain. However, seeing Valoros out cold, Maximus smiled in relief. This black sheep is finally gone. Let's see what secrets you are hiding. Putting his hand on Valoros's head, he activated his system. The family and power system is a tier 11 treasure that can search and scan everything. Digging some memories of some apex sovereign should be no problem. After a few seconds of his system digging deep into Valoros's memories, Valoros suddenly exploded. Maximus felt Valoros's cause and effect in the Ethereum realm suddenly disappear. Valoros's battle will, which could be used to resurrect him, dissipated. Everything about the Valoros seemed to be gone. A defense mechanism? Maximus guessed, seeing the phenomenon. Fortunately, his system was quite capable and still absorbed a vast amount of memory. Millions of epochs worth of memory should be enough for him to know the origin of Valoros. Let's see, Maximus urged his system, infusing the memory into his mind. Soon, huge surges of memory quickly descend, making his head hurt. Not wanting to die, he hurriedly stopped his system. It seemed I still underestimated a powerhouse of memories. A memory isn't just a picture of videos in play. It combines emotions, insights, everything one senses during memory. As a tier 9 being, their sense of the world is in a whole other dimension. Absorbing such raw information is nothing but suicide. He would probably explode by now if not for his quickness and a little toughness. Sort and transfer all key memories, Maximus ordered. He only wanted to know Valoros's main ideas and origin. As for the rest, he would slowly study it in the future. This time, the memory infusion was more gentle and precise. A few days later, Maximus slowly opened his eyes, digesting the massive memories. Hug, Maximus breathed, wiping his non-existent sweat. He was nearly assimilated by the memories infused into his mind. If not for the system and being used to accepting massive infusions of different knowledge, he didn't know if he would still be himself. However, this is quite interesting. A clone of a higher being? That's right, even Valoros was just a clone. This higher being's goal seemed to be studying, or should he say experimenting. Valoros's origin was much more grand than expected. The Ethereum realm, a dimension made up of 4 massive continents, wasn't previously like this. The Arcane Continent, the Nexus Continent, the Divine Continent, and the Beast Continent were in their own Tier 9 dimension, which merged to form the now-known Ethereum realm. This should be the reason for the illogical diversity of the Ethereum realm. There are gods, beasts, magicians, and warriors. Each has its dimension and culture before merging with each other. This is also why each continent could accommodate over 1,000 apex sovereigns, despite the Ethereum realm's only 1118 laws. He had read from the book he bought in the Myriad World Mall that each law could only be occupied by an apex sovereign. There could only be one apex sovereign responsible for each law. However, the Ethereum broke this rule as each continent could have one controlling a law. The one responsible for merging the 4 dimensions is Valoros, or should he say another clone of the higher being? Using a power beyond his imagination, he fused the 4 dimensions like Play-Doh. As for the goal, Maximus had no idea. Valoros died too quickly before he could dig up some more information. What a pity. Digging up a memory of such a powerhouse was like digging for a gold mountain. It had all kinds of novel knowledge that he didn't think of.